know if she introduces herself, she'll be too modest. Mel, I'm going to try not to cry. I've known Mel for 20 years. She's one of my best friends. She is probably the bravest person I know. She's not afraid
I agree.
of... You agree? Okay. How many of you know Mel personally? Yeah, it's... Mel, and the thing I like about her as a friend is that we have deep discussions. She's not afraid to tell me when she disagrees with me, but she also listens really, really carefully, and I hope I do the same. She was a professor at USF, is that right, Mel, when I first met her, but she dropped that job, that career calling, to stand up for persecuted people here in the United States, especially, and I say persecuted, specifically many of our friends who were pro-Palestinian, and they still continue to languish, be tortured in prisons today, 20 years later. And it's because we see this happening again that I think it's really important to have Mel's voice included here today. She, many of you are on her mailing list. She's tireless. And with that, Mel, if I got anything wrong or missed anything, and she encourages you to ask questions if there's anything you'd like to hear about her or about the issues. Thank you. You're
So, Lois, thank you for that really nice and accessible
welcome.
Anyway, so currently, so I'm Mel, and currently I'm the director, or executive director of the Coalition for Civil Freedoms, which is CCF, and a lot of you maybe remember it as a national coalition to protect civil freedoms. But I wrote things down, otherwise I won't stay short and I'll forget things, so sorry if I be reading. But CCF's mission is to defend civil liberties and freedoms, promote a fair U.S. criminal justice system, and advocate for the rights of political prisoners targeted in the war on terror. So we already heard about Samuel Arian. He was a supporter of Palestinian and a big supporter of Palestinian rights and very effective at talking to legislators and politicians. So he's like a threat, and so you silence him and charge him with terrorism. The jury, basically acquitted him of terrorism, but he still spent 11 years. Over 5 years in prison, mostly solitary confinement, and then another 5 years in house arrest. But he is currently finally got deported to Istanbul, and he is not silent. You may hear him all the time. He's, if you're on any of the social media or anywhere, he's getting all over the world now. So CCF advocates for prisoners who have been unjustly targeted under the anti-terrorism laws, like Sammy. And these laws have targeted Palestinians basically since the beginning. The Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996 allowed the Secretary of State to designate any organization they wanted to as foreign terrorist organization, which providing material support, as they call it, to one of them is a crime that can put you away for life. And what constitutes this support is very vague, that can include speech and does include speech, and even speech that encourages a group to avoid violence could still get you charged with that. So initially, 30% of the initial designations were Palestinian groups such as Hamas. So the prisoners that we advocate for haven't committed any crime, but they were entrapped by FBI informants who befriend them, sometimes for years, record things they say. And the comments are selectively played to a jury, and they get convictions that lead to incredibly long sentences. And one example of this is the Duca brothers. These were three brothers who were entrapped by the FBI and accused of plotting to attack Fort Dix. You might remember that from the news. This was not that long after 9/11, and it was easy to get convictions then. So the informant who testified at this trial said that these brothers knew nothing about any plot, but they still got convicted and sentenced to life in prison. And that's where they are today. And a very short summary of what CCF does. We really do a lot of things, including education, like we do, speak in other events and that kind of thing. We provide monthly support to indigent prisoners who have no outside help. And we provide some support to the families of political prisoners. It's also very hard on them. And then one important project we're doing right now is filing motions for compassionate release of prisoners. And we have succeeded in getting the release of 6 prisoners. In one case, it was a young kid who was entrapped. It took a decade off of his sentence. So it's a great project. I'm really proud of it. And apparently motions are being prepared for the Duca brothers. And there's also many prisoners to go, but it's very time consuming and there's a lot of expenses involved. And so if you'd like to donate, we will be happily take any money you would like to give to help release these prisoners. Like I said, I was trying to keep it like really short, but Lois told me to be short, so I did. And
One thing I have to say,
do you have any questions?
we can't do any donations here in this room,
Yeah,
but we can do them online,
Yeah.
outside,
Yeah.
etc.
So I got a QR code over there, and then, you know, I thought I have brochures here. And I've got these 2 books here. This Inventing Terrorists was written by our legal team. And it's sort of kind of like our Bibles, kind of what we do is in here, whatever basis is. And then the Terror Trap is a bunch of like scholars from all over the world contributed to this. And they're both available for like, again, a donation, but we can't do it here. But I just don't know whether I have them. And now, if anybody has any questions, I would happily answer them.
Mel, could you tell a little bit more about Sammy's case? I think people might be interested in hearing.
Yeah, he was, he got a lot of attention there because he was, he was going to Washington all the time, meeting with presidents. I mean, he was very well known there. They were accomplishing things. And so then basically, it's sort of Israel actually went after him, is how I see it. And they wanted to silence him, basically. And so he spent, he was a tenured professor at USF. I mean, to charge him with terrorism was ludicrous. And he spent about 2.5 years in prison before he had a trial. And mostly, that was pretty much solitary confinement, those 2.5 years. And it was in Coleman, Florida, which is quite a ways from Tampa. So it was very difficult for the lawyer to meet with him. It was difficult for his family to visit him. There's all kinds of obstacles to him preparing the case. And then we went to the trial. Some of us here, Lois and I were there a lot. And I was there every day, at least part of the time. And it was just ludicrous. It was like they had no evidence, and one of the jurors afterwards, when they were acquitted of terrorism, he was asked what would it take to convict him, and he said evidence. And they said, 6 months of a trial, there was no evidence at all that he had done anything. But they still managed to keep him in prison for 5.5 years and another 5 years house arrest. But he's in Istanbul now. He's at a university. He's at a university there. He's holding all kinds of events, and he's getting interviewed by people all over the world, including here. So it's really happy. I'm really happy he did not get silenced, because he'd be a hard one to silence. And he was also the founder of Coalition for Civil Freedoms. I need to mention that for sure. He thought it up in his prison cell. So.
And this is a fund for legal representation, so that they can keep fighting for people who are unjustly imprisoned.
The one I'm begging for, yes.
Yes.
Yeah,